Here we go. Okay. This is WNDC in DC. And WNDC stands for We in the Crib and You Ain't in DC. I'm speaking to you just blocks from the nation's capital. As a personal report from a Washingtonian perspective of this whole transition into a whole new world order of the ages, age of Aquarius, COVID epidemic, worldwide bipolar experience that we're facing right now, especially as it pertains to Americans, because we are we're the test image of the new world from our emancipation of the old world, which now in this whole transitional period is causing so much of a discomfort in our transition due to the mere fact that we're incapable of identifying who exactly is we and, why we have to be unified in any form or fashion, or at least respectful and considerate of the inclusion of the whole we the people in order to form a most perfect union. Here it is, 2021. It's January 6th. It's just 6 days in, and we've got maybe 14 days left before the expected shift in power existed here in this country. And yet we're right now personally facing this awkwardness of being associated in connection to all of the images that many of the people from around the world are watching in a manner where many of us have spent more time answering friends and family of afar, and just the concern of, are you okay? Are you all right? I know you down there. What's going on? This and the other. Well, what I've found most uncomfortable about the whole experience to date as a Washingtonian is how little Americans realize the purpose of this place we call the second the second, looking at six-pack American. Hey, people are now in Vegas trying to bet how fast they can get old Trump out of there and then more hot water. And I'm headed that way, but I feel that I need to gradually move into this because it's been so much in just one day. It's been so much in just the 6th day of the new year of 2012, after what we've all been capable of admitting has been one hell of a whirlwind of an experience that seemed to become more personal for everybody on the planet. During March, right there in March, bam, this whole new world order, this whole age of Aquarius, this whole end of all things, this whole time where we have no choice but to go in a very uncomfortable direction as a whole, due to the mere fact that there's no solitude left on this planet in our existence, if you value your existence to any degree, because we are now our brothers and our sisters keepers in theory, due to the mere fact that no matter which side of government or perspective that you want to support or consider, it's become very, very obvious that when we have days like this as Americans, kind of like the high school-ish or sports kind of thing where you root for your team and they have a really embarrassing, disgusting act that you have to basically be associated with it due to the mere fact that you're a fan, that's your team or this to the other, kind of like the way black people feel when we see black on black crime or things that happen that black people do that make people look at all black people in the manner of going, damn, man, or for that reason, how white people, really can't really stand being blamed for whatever suppression all of these people of color keep accusing them of, or the same thing of, this whole progression into a new world standard for valid people all over the planet who've had their own fair share of blame as to how the last, generations or whatnot, were not necessarily very honorable in their existence, and here we are 2012, and as an American, as a veteran, as a Marine, as a union craftsman who have worked on the same grounds and areas that I've watched be violated today in such a manner that here I sit. While I'd like to talk politics and everything with you, I personally am going through my own newfound PTSD over the mere fact that all the times in the past, I've been here since right after 9/11, 2002, and I've been experiencing my first experience of working in a secured area was 2002 for, the 4th of July and the whole nine on the Capitol, and on the same area I'm looking at the same image that doesn't change, from 2002 to now 2021. And I'm seeing the events and the people, and I'm watching the interviews and whatnot of the caliber and the pedigree of some of the people that have been more than allowed to possess their dominance and existence on that property to such a level that it overwhelmed the law enforcement, the people that we expect to be very professional in their ability to protect our existence on their property as such. And one of the images that really threw me was this video of several reporters and camera operators and whatnot, because I also do that. That's a portion of my craft. And watching these highly expensive cameras and whatnot, and all this gear that normally they had hovered up into, a pack almost with, several networks and whatnot out there and everything. And watching as the crowd got so violent that they ran off the owners of this equipment as they were stomping on it and throwing it down in there. And I'm sitting back watching thousands of dollars of good broadcast equipment just being, fake news, this, that, the other. And I'm thinking to myself that these people who are doing this, these people that at any other time in my life in this industry, I'll honestly admit that never have I ever witnessed such a display of lack of lack of protection of wealth and purpose on those grounds, as watching how at any given point in time prior to this kind of event, any assault or anything on the media that's covering these pristine events is almost automatically felony. And the fact that they're not just, harming personal property, but they're also harming, international big business network, things and this and the other, or even the importance of actually being able to get the news, and this and the other. And they were so driven in their belief of fake news and this and the other, so and so and so and so. And in some of these cases, the reason why they approached these people was just due to the mere fact that the people that I'm aware of that are blessed enough to have earned the ability of being, freelance or, house camera operators or reporters or this and the other, just happen to be lucky to be in a part of. It's kind of like the correspondence back in the era of the Vietnam War, where there were people who, were they cut their chops in going over, and instead of having a gun or anything else, they would follow. This is so and so, and reporting this and the other, so and so. Oh yeah, so and so and so and so, and how some people even garnered the reputation of being, yeah, man, I boldly go in there. I wanted this and that. We've all seen these other things, but this is deeper than all of that, because I'm watching Americans en masse all of a sudden find the privilege of actually acting out in such a manner that any other group or race of people who's ever been allowed to be on those hollow grounds since the 1800s have never been capable of doing that. Even watching some of the reports, and I'm well aware of my Southern roots and whatnot, but while I'm watching these reports, and there's several people who have this Southern flag, and whatnot with them as they were in the nation's capital and whatnot. And the reports are saying this is the first time that it's ever been recorded that the Stars and Bars have flown in the nation's capital, even when it was way back in the, before the insurrection of, the South and the North or whatnot. It still boggles my mind at the mere fact that as I watch Congress and the Senate go back to work this evening after this afternoon chaos caused them to have to harbor in place or to go to a secure area or this and the other, and thank God they saved the hollowed boxes that held the electoral votes that they were about to vote on and all this other stuff. But the reality is that part of our pride in our government was the mere fact that up until this event, the only time that there ever been a person who's not been voted, who's not a politician or anything, been allowed to exist and freely, just be themselves on the Congress and the Senate floor during session, because technically speaking, they were during session, in the history. And the only other person was Frederick Douglass. And yet I'm sitting there and I'm watching people taking selfies on the same podium and whatnot now that we watched the Pelosi's and the newfound Mitch and all these other people like that, still going back to, and my instinct of seeing that will never change, because it's like, watching something so pristine in your mind and then watching Bubba and a couple other lucky misfits who have no idea what hollow ground they're standing upon, are just having a good time, stealing stuff and taking stuff, and now you're not even capable of saying, do you understand that you've basically made history on just having your happy little misfit butt up in here? Listen to their people. There's one white woman whom every other person who was a part of that whole existence can't even at least call her a true patriot. She took one for the team, a martyr, anything else for this whole thing, because only one death was recorded in this historic event, and nobody knows her name. Nobody knows that, she was unarmed and just happened to be in an area she had no idea. Nobody else had an idea. And those people in that security, I, for the life of me, can't really understand how for up until this point, we were all under the impression that all Capitol and government police are taught and structured to consider protection of property greater than a value of life, enough that if you were to run off and decide you wanted to go run over and snatch up the Constitution out of the doggone case and go to the bathroom and wipe your butt with it, that was a killing offense. Just even thinking about digging in and trying to get that, protect. I remember the old Christianic song, we got to hold up the bloodstained banner. We got to hold it up until we die. And yet I'm watching doggone Capitol Police and whatnot and security sitting up there watching as these people are slowly, coming into the place. And they're like, stop. Do not come in here. You're not out in here. This, that, and the other. And these guys are like, what you going to do? Shoot me? Shoot me then, Mo. Shoot me. This, that, and the other. And there are more people coming out there, and they start realizing, man, while I want to say, do a Mr. Joe Clark and go, hey, so-and-so, the enemy has invaded this, that, and the other. So we got you on camera. Not this one, and yet these people are sitting back up there, and they're really, in a way, I would like to say that there's a lot of lucky Americans who are not even aware of how God really looked after everyone involved in this insurrection that happened today. Because most of people like myself, people of color, whatnot, will guarantee you that if this was a majority people of color mob, even trying to attempt to go through half of what these people have done, there would not be, at the end of everything else, just one death. One white woman, one patriot, female, took one for the whole team that feels like they've accomplished something today, as a reason for them to have taken upon this Hajj, this journey from everywhere else in this country, to be here on this hollow day at this hollow time to actually earn the t-shirt of, I was a part of it. I wasn't up there, but I was a part of it. I'm proud to be an American. On the unknown identity of a white woman who lost her life unarmed. She wasn't a patriot. She wasn't Antifa. She wasn't anything else. She was just one of those extra people who actually wanted to go up and be a part of this whole mob mentality, until this mob mentality really became a mob mentality. And now they're swept up into something that, if that woman would have known that she was not going to go home tonight to her family and her kids and everything else, not even get a sound bite on the media over the mere fact that So here we are. It's 2021. And while all this is going on, 2/3 of the anger, the drive, and whatnot of these patriot people who came here had nothing to do with the historical event that just happened today. They didn't go and rush the Capitol because they knew that they were about to take the doggone electoral count officially. They didn't do that. They did that because it was a great day, man. The 6th, yeah, I can come up here on the 6th or 5th, yeah, 5th or the 6th. It sounds like a good day. I'll go up there for it. They didn't run up in there and doggone tear down the doors and the windows and everything and run all in there and run over the doggone security, daring them to be shot and killed just so that they can actually take one for the team in order for them to prevent the miscarriage of the electoral. No. None of them was up in there mad at this great state of the new Georgia that for the first time has done two things. And one of those things is actually not even as, I just thought about that. Actually, both of them are kind of really, really cool. All right. Now keep in mind that here we are as Americans in this country, in the new world, realizing that from the jump, we were started as just, these colonies. And the most insignificant colony in all of them was also the largest, and that was the great state of Georgia, even before Florida was even American property. Now, out of everything else, the mere fact that you've got your first Jewish white boy Democrat and your first black Reverend Democrat that are now the first representatives, Senate representatives from a state that basically created the existence of what some, are aware of, that was called the Dixiecrats. Now, I say this because it sounds really similar to the phrase that Malcolm X once said when he was talking about the chickens coming back to roost, because the pride that, the great state of Georgia's inhabitants, the newly found great state inhabitants that were an intricate part of overturning the structure of what has always been a expected historical, reality, that the great state of Georgia will never be blue. And yet, when it went rogue, it was blue because that was Dixiecrats. But Dixiecrats existed before we start red bluing our reality. And a lot of people can't really understand how there are people who've been a part of this that have no idea. I remember when we had the Black Lives Matter little protests and riot and all that other stuff up here, and a little splinter group went out and they tore down the William Pike statue. Now, what makes it so important in this conversation is the mere fact that I used to personally know one of the King freedom fighters, Hosea Williams. And I remember back in that era where, as a Georgian at the time, we watched as he got notoriety for being one of the several people who were calling for the removal of the Pike statue due to the mere fact that he was a Klansman and this and that. He was also from a Georgia little town called Forsyth County. And so after they did that big thing up here, they figured that they had enough pull that they were going to roll on down to Pike's stomping grounds and they were going to protest there. And if you go back and you look at that little report or whatnot during that time, the great, city of Forsyth County at that particular time was so up in arms about the whole thing that they literally all agreed to be, we the Klan, and you ain't gonna come up here. And at one point in time, they thought they were gonna come in and have one of those Martin Luther Kings. And I'll never forget that the report from that point on was the images of them stoning, rocking, and everything but shooting, and ran all of those doggone people out of their city and county with pride. And that was it. And yet, if you were to look at the stats of Forsyth County, the same people who owned it then still own it, but the population is damn near 70 something plus of people of other cultures than what used to be all white back then. It was a sundown city. Don't you get caught out here after sundown, boy. Now it's 2021, and the descendants from a lot of that kind of mentality, a lot of that culture, have taken it upon themselves to make a personal trip up to Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, to be allowed to give their respectful protest over what issues they have under the expectation of them minding their manners, because they only get a couple of blocks to do this legally. Just because you come to DC to protest, you stay in the same little realm that everybody else does the same thing on there. That's the reason why those big places are built for that kind of thing. And yet nobody saw a run on the nation's capital. That's like if you're a Christian watching somebody make a run on, the most sacred church, or if you're, a Jew running on the most sacred synagogue, or the most sacred mosque, or, that's what this country is. I mean, we see coups in international reports on different countries where, they come in, try to do it with tanks and this, that, and the other, and the splinters of the army and this, that, and the other, and all these other things, and all these other international countries. But the image that these people see is so shameful from a military standpoint, because this was not a orchestrated, planned event. This was not a association with any group. This wasn't Proud Boys. This wasn't Antifa. This wasn't this, that, and the other. This was ignorance. This was people who honestly genetically had taken in all of the left, right in their soul, to the point that once it got to where it got, there was no reason for them to stop, because they were really honestly at that, this is my place and I want to do whatever I want to. And just because you're one of those kind of nasty, filthy people who don't want to flush your toilet, don't mean you have to run into our bathroom and leave such a turd without the consideration that it's not just yours, it's ours. I mean, you could do whatever you want, but if you can't have a consideration and a mere fact that, it's not just yours, then you trying to take possession of it, like many of those people did, is the same image of what started what we read in our histories as the Civil War. It wasn't a civil war. It was the same thing that we saw just happen on January the 6th, 2021 in Washington, D.C.'s nation's capital. The same exact thing, minus the guns. The only difference was it was just enough people to go directly to the source thinking that they had, and had no idea of the source that they were in. They had no idea. They didn't just run in there and all of a sudden decide to get up on that doggone pulpit and proclaim a new law, then proclaim a this, that, and the other. They went in that doggone thing just going, woo-hoo, look at me. They went in that thing trying to get out the same kind of frustration that many of them would do in their own hometowns when they wanted to doggone burn down the Winn-Dixie so they can get free meat. The only man that really ran out of there with anything is that one picture, that one dude has got the podium with the national little thing on it and the whole nine, and you're sitting back there going, man, that's the most embarrassing thing from a law enforcement officer's mentality, because any idiot that would let that doggone idiot walk out the damn door with a damn podium. Okay, I'd like to digress, but I can't, because we're still hot dead into this whole thing. And even as I speak, the audacity of what so many so-called patriot people thought that they were coming up here to do, basically gave our authorities, our government structure, the permission to basically consider all of you people insignificant in the direction that this country and this government is headed towards, due to the audacity of the intensity into which many of those patriot mentality people had no respect for those hallowed grounds and areas enough to shit on everything. And I'm going to say it just like that, because that's just the way it feels as an American person. And truthfully, honestly enough, as a Washingtonian, I have to at least be able to admit that I'm proud of my District of Columbia's government in sorts, because it's been capable enough of being able to alert us to the mere fact that don't be a part of this. And that's the reason why you don't see clashes of us and them, and yet the realization that at the point in time that they realized that these doggone misfits and fools was really done lost their mind in that little grid that was basically built for each and every person to do the same thing without the riot part, respectfully. And yet they abuse their welcome. And thusly, it's kind of like being a Christian. And you got a sacred little place and somebody who's a Christian decides that they wants to basically protest in the manner that they feel the need for their issues or whatnot to be so important that they don't care who they have to go through. They don't care even if 60% of the people who came here to protest today truly believe deep in their heart that God has basically professed their need to come here and be a part of this event that will now go down in infamy as one of the most embarrassing days, to such a degree that they're even trying to invoke they're about to rewrite a whole amendment just to go, can we get this idiot out of here? Even his own vice president was like, yo, dog, because we're stuck in a whole lot of other mess. That's not just mess that we have to deal with, but this is mess that's also connected to the rest of the world, who would hope that they, would see us be just as responsible, respectful, considerate, and concerned about this mess that's going on all over the planet, and not just decide to basically jeopardize what we now can look back at as the mother of all mass spreaders. You know, this taking our country back, whatever it is, kind of thing. You know, the only person that is not going to be damaged, that is not going to lose anything. I mean, it ain't gonna change their value of life. As a matter of fact, it only assures them the allowance of it just out of, national security. Picture that. Is my man 45? The only thing that is going to do that's going to make him uncomfortable is it's also going to, make it even more uncomfortable for him to get back to his old underground style of life with a lot of the other underground people, that a lot of us, have an issue with, because they have these fetishes and whatnot that, are very immoral in our state of community. And yet, it's good to be the king, you would think. And yet here we are, as I'm watching our government go back into session so that they can complete something that they have to do today anyway, after they've basically experienced having to duck and run out of the same area that they're now back in a state of discomfort for the rest of their terms, with the memory of the mere fact that they no longer have the security or the comfort of believing that there's never going to be somebody that's going to bust through that damn door and threaten their doggone safety, because it happened today. And it's never happened anywhere close to this since the 1800s, people. And I mean, this is almost like some Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake, run on that, the insurrectional kind of thing. Only these people didn't all do it for the same reason. Every last one of these people who wanted to act up in there just been dying to act up in there and having the greatest experience of going, look, Mom. And they're not going to get any accolades once they go, they pack up and pay their hotel fees and going back home. They're not going to get a hero's welcome back in their neighborhood. I came, I saw, I got some stuff I stole out of there. Some of them are actually in possessions of some of the things that they basically made themselves at home with and took and grabbed up and this and the other, that they may have no idea of the historical value or the threat to national security in some of the papers or whatnot that they might be in possession of, that they have no idea could be that valuable. And yet we, the people, are here this evening, due to the curfew that that our esteemed mayor has placed upon the district. It's allowed many of us Washingtonians the comfort of knowing that whatever the hell that they were on out there, they're no more allowed out than we are. And if they think that we mess around, then go ahead. Think you going out for pizza, or looking for a fight. Ain't gonna happen. But this is deeper than that, because, man, I am so proud of the great state of Georgia having politically evolved into something that many people from this point on will see in such a light that it can only be in gratitude to the ancestors that existed, the ones in Rosewood and all the other, back in Terminus time when, when Atlanta was privately owned by the B&O Railroad and had some of the most richest people of color in the South in residence. But it's like here on the 6th day of 2021, I can honestly say it's not been a great day, but it's not all bad. Because after all this is said and done, and we go to the 7th day and 8th day, we get these other 14 out the way and then go into all the rest of this stuff. It's a done deal. You said your piece and why, and this, that, the other, but now we on some other stuff now. And I think for a lot of the people that were a part of what happened here in the nation's capital today, a lot of them are going to have the discomfort of growing into the realization that that was the greatest day they had left. And due to the mere fact that that's their decision, that's their piece, or this, that, and the other, they are slowly going to grow into the realization that, nobody's forcing them to be extinct, but this not my daughter mentality will only cause you the lack of the ability of reproducing, and therefore and yet here's the age of Aquarius thing, all the people who, got into that whole philosophical thing back in the 50s and the 60s that all of a sudden turned into hippies and was thinking, yeah, man, it's going to be great, this, that, and the other. They didn't expect for this shit to only start growing into that today. They thought we were going to make it then. They had a rude awakening that basically came back on black folks again. And yet, today I watch something happen that I think a lot of these patriot people are never going to understand. It's really that serious and just like that. As a Washingtonian, I watched as all the events happened. And the one thing that I found quite impressive is the mere fact that while I expected the nation's capital to be the most secure spot in Washington, in D.C., the one doggone spot in Washington, D.C. that was the most secure spot? Black Lives Matter Plaza. There were more people guarding just a couple of blocks of painted street in dedication to Black Lives Matter than all the other I'm taking my country back down in the Capitol thing matter. And for that reason, I think we need to really understand that it's not a if, it's a when, and when all this is over and we realize that we now are faced with, having to, face this possible punishment of quarantine and whatnot, just due to the mere fact that we've had an overabundance of idiots who decided they wanted to basically be a part of a mass spreading event at a time when we're still not even prepared for the level of exposure. Just this virus shit is on, and yet all these people came up here, and I was a part of the Black Lives Matter protest thing. I was a part of the Million Man March thing twice. I was a part of the March on Washington, the Civil Rights March, and the March for Poverty with the King thing, and all that. I've been a part of a lot of those other things, but this march that these people actually came all the way up here for the 5th and 6th so far, has none of the redeeming qualities in it, because for all extensive purposes, I can honestly admit that each time that you left out of there after having experienced any of those things, you felt that your voice was, if not heard, at least respected. And this one, how can any God respect an American respect some of the people who actually walked up in here and didn't respect their own damn country enough that they really honestly had the audacity to soil sacred ground as a last chance to be identified as the weakest link in our evolution. And so with all that being said, man, I'm going to just let this be what it's going to be, because excuse me, because I still got a lot of catching up to do with the electoral vote thing and whatnot that they got going on. Man, it's really funny, because as I'm watching this doggone thing with even with the vice president and all these other people, talking about their objections or not, the score is 6 yay and 93, nay on objection to, certify the election in just Arizona. And it's about to go that way for the next 51 other states that they're basically about to record. And even for the people who came up here in hopes that they could actually have a better say, or this, that, and the other, this is a shameful event that occurred in the process of a peaceful protest that was expected to happen, swayed more of their own out of embarrassment and shame to make sure that they do not continue to support something that basically caused them fear and discomfort in their own place, because they didn't care if they were looking out for just the Republicans and they want to go in here and doggone terrorize the Democrats and this and that. They didn't care. And yet these new people have been sworn in for the next couple of times or whatnot, and they got this on their hands. So thank you very much, Red Hat people. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to let y'all have it, because this is WNDC. WNDC stands for We in the Crib and You Ain't. NDC, in my crib. Blocks from the capital, in the nation's capital. Speaking from my perspective, because it doesn't matter how you feel about it. It doesn't change who I am on this dirt. And for that reason, you good?